This counter-meta Mei Brig strat just beat the best team in Europe with a squeaky clean records. But how? Now, we've seen Mei strats in the past, but this time it's different. We've never seen a Mei Brig Kiri comp ever, let alone coming from a team that's 2 and 5, who quite literally beat the best team in Europe just by doing their own thing.
I'm gonna do my own thing.
So get ready for some juicy ice cool dinks, never before seen flanks, and Alcatia fans getting a bit worried that they might lose.
What's the problem?
Hey, either turn the shit off or I gotta walk.
What? You was just jamming his own.
No, I was not.
Now I'm gonna use a tree analogy to help analyze this comp. The roots is obviously the foundation to the whole strat, which in this case is high pressure prevention. If you saw my anti-dive video, I talked about disrupting or preventing dives before they even happen to be the first step. Just how the early bird gets the worm, the early push prevents the dive. And it turns out that Mei Brig Zarya are really good at that due to 2 traits: solo dueling and hard pocketing. We'll start by dealing with that first factor. Mei intrinsically is actually a pretty competent one-on-one duelist, having 50 more HP over most other DPS characters, as well as a self-heal drastically reduces the risk when fighting for space. And for context, 2 years ago, Backbone made a name for himself for how insane his Mei was. Combine this with how Tracer doesn't like playing in enclosed spaces and how Mei does, it's not a shock that in this first fight, Backbone lands a good wall behind the enemy Tracer, also known as the Great Wall of China. This obviously blocks off Tracer's only retreat, quickly forcing the recall. And looking at this more broadly, it prevents the Tracer from being able to set up a dive. But you know who else allows you to prevent dives?
My mom!
Okay, maybe not, but a cast walking forward with double pockets certainly does. Which is where we get into the rest of the comp. The Zarya can use her bubbles pretty much solely on the Cassidy to allow him to walk forward, while the Brig can toss multiple packs his way too. Honestly, I've mentioned Cass's HP nerf 1,000 times, but this is a pretty smart way of circumventing it. The Mei meanwhile is self-sufficient. She doesn't drain any resources away from the Cassidy, which you can see by looking top down at the Mei playing on her own. Following on from the Tracer getting forced out, Zodiel walks forward super aggressively, in part thanks to the Mei wall. Tread also scouts out the ball, which kinda jump scares him into engaging early, not getting a great slam. Now having baited out the ball slam, Zodiel's able to push forward with yet another bubble, catching not just the Wu Yang, but the Tracer soon after too. This is ultimately what I mean by high pressure prevention, kinda like high pressure in FIFA or in football. The Mei cast Zarya are able to apply high pressure early on, which forces the ball Tracer to do things they really don't want to do. And the Brig Kiri enable this style because they're both great at hard pocketing aggressive angles, or in other words, supporting their frontline. Now, things do get a little messy as Kenel gets picked off by the enemy Sojourn, and Backbone looks like he's in a little bit of trouble. But that's where his cryo comes in, also known as the oh shit button. This is also the trunk of the comp, stalling and rotating. The point here isn't to actually get HP back necessarily, it's to instead give time for the Zarya Brig to walk over so they can initiate that double pocket onto Backbone. Obviously, the elephant in the room here is that they haven't got a Lucio, but again, this circumvents that weakness. Backbone soon gets his escorts, moving towards the coast side, but now we're in prime ball territory. Gen G no longer have that much space control, and looking at the angles, you can guess what's gonna happen. Things start to slip as Backbone gets his cryo forced out just by a Sojourn snare. And even though Zodiel forces the Tracer recall, it doesn't really matter as Kellex is able to support his Tracer, fighting back with his water balloons. Tread bubbles his cast once more, but because the cast isn't able to find any value, it's kinda cooked for Gen G. If you are thinking about how to outplay this weird strat, this is how you do it. You don't fight the cast being bubbled, you have to play distance and wait it out. Once that bubble is over, Checkmate deepens his angle, and Chase is able to land 2 grapple kills. Now that Gen G have to try and retake the points, the question really is, how the fuck do they do this into the trillion different angles that Alcatia have? It's like a 1% chance of it going well. And how do they do this without speed boost or a sim TP? Most teams honestly would just TP the points, which we've seen a billion times before. Well, the answer to all of this is in the Mei. More specifically, the Mei's ability to juggle juggle aggro with his Zarya. I've mentioned juggling aggro before in my Reaper video, but in short, it just means that if one person, like the Mei, is taking aggro, that should allow the Zarya and the rest of her team to push forwards. We see in this fight, it kinda goes to shit because Backbone just loses the duel against Landon, who was also his former teammate for about 3 years. I know Landon was definitely happy when he got that kill.
Hey, you know how I do it.
To help fix this, in the fight after, Kanail starts with Backbone just so he doesn't die. But now, you can see from a top-down view just how much attention the Mei is pulling. Again, Backbone's goal here isn't to get kills, it's to stall and buy time for his team to rotate. The ball is also shit scared of the Cassidy too, obviously because he doesn't want to get flashed. But this means that if Chase swings in too late, the Brick Cass are gonna get to point for free, which is not only what happens, but Zodiel catches checkmate once more. This is where we get into the bark of the tree, where things really start to kick off. In this context, it's forcing points and leveraging the ult economy. Now yes, you might say that High Noon isn't that good, that Blizzard is situational, and that Tread is about to have an AKM grab. Shout out to you if you get that reference. But when comparing them to Pulse Bomb or Mines, it's not really a competition. In fact, Alkitsia are so desperate to keep the points that they pop both the Kitsune and Overclock, which does find Zodiel. But Crispy matches out with the rally, and Backbow comes in behind with the Blizzards. The wall is pretty smart too, as it gives the Sojourn just one escape path, and while the Blizzard doesn't freeze anyone, that's not the point because the kill is secured anyways. Things do eventually get messy, but I specifically want to highlight the weakness of the Wu Yang ults, at least against this comp. I've kinda gassed up how strong Wu Yang ult can be in the past. But when Brig Shield, Zarya Bubbles, Suzu, Cryo, and just dancing around corners can all outplay the Wu Yang ult, it's not actually that broken. So, when Kelix pops it on checkmate, he's unable to find anything. The Kiri has Suzu and the Brig can shield it off. Meanwhile, Tread captures both backliners with the Grav, closing out the fight confidently. And, to top it off, Zodiel still has the High Noon, while Alkitsia blew their whole load. No pause. Now moving on to the branches of the tree, which are just nice additions or extra little nuances. Perks are one of those. Because the root of this comp is in enabling Zodiel to pop off, it's not a surprise that Tread eventually picks the Spotter perk, activating passive healing as well as giving a speed buff. For Mei, Backbone picks the new Skating Ring perk, which also gives move speed and 50 healing per second in blizzards. Considering how good Mei's ult can be for zoning and forcing points, alongside how situational the other minor perk is, it's a no-brainer. For reference, I do actually like the new minor perk that they advertised for Season 18, and thankfully it just got buffed this season. The last notable perk is mostly for Brig, where she basically got an updated version of her Bash minor perk. As you can imagine, the speed helps for the rotate, and the instant healing helps to absorb any dive pressure. I was gonna add in Kiri too, but honestly, everyone picks the new Suzu perk anyways, but that might change with the slight nerf this patch. Back to when Genji get the cap, we get the last branch reveal. But before I do, just a quick coaching plug. Click the top link down below if you want personal help climbing the ranks. Back to the last branch, which is split pushing or stalemating. I kinda covered this in my Zarya Bastion video, but basically, the Zarya will zone 2 or 3 players, in this case, taking a 1v2. Meanwhile, the rest of Genji are able to effectively take a 4v3. It's a little more complicated than that, because Zarya can still bubble the Cass, and the Kiri can still turn for the Zarya. But even if this turns into a 2v2 and a 3v3 each side, this is called stalemating. And it's really good to do when you've got point control, because you're just slowing down the fight, farming up the point gap. To break down how this fight goes, Zodiel starts by pressuring the Kiri Sojourn, getting a bubble from his Zarya, a wall from his Mei, and some generous pocket from his supports too. Chase tries to punish the Brig Cass by pooping them around, but a clutch Suzu by Kanail just about saves Zodiel from getting railed. This just goes to show how much Genji are putting into the Cass. And actually, it's Backbone who finds the finishing blow. Now entering the last fight, I'm looking at the ult economy between both teams, and if you had to gamble gamble like a kick streamer on who wins, I know where I'm placing my bets. Just like we've seen all rounds, Gen.G apply high pressure early on to disrupt and prevent the setup of Alcatzia. They do this with the High Noon, and while it doesn't catch the Sojin kill just quite, it gives Gen.G so much space to work with. In fact, Landon on the Kiri gets down to 2 HP, with Tread quickly catching that first kill, which is so important considering that the Kitsune is one of the 2 ultimates that Alcatzia have. Chase tries to make something happen desperately, but his slam gets Suzu'd, and he basically gets knocked around like he's in the pinball machine. But we're not even done there. Gen.G step on the gas once more, with the Brick cast pushing to the right side, which also sets up the perfect escape TP for the Kiri 2. The Wu Yang doesn't even know what's hit him, and neither does the Kiri 2. Meanwhile, they're making stolen points if needed, which raises that point earlier. In fact, Gen.G played this fight so fucking well, they don't even need to use any of their ultimates. And just like that, they not only take a round off EU's best team, but they also take an entire map later. Now yes, some of you might just be nerd emojis telling me that Ziad wasn't playing.
It's you!
In case you don't know, Ziad is probably the best tank player in Europe right now who's on Alcatzia. I'm not too sure if it's to do with their recent Saudi E-League suspensions, but regardless. Gen.G are certainly a team to look out for come playoffs this weekend, and if any of the players are watching, shout out to you guys, giving me serious Dark Horse London Spitfire vibes. As always, if you enjoyed, click the video on screen, and until next time.